when Marcus Reed, a successful entrepreneur and owner of a renowned corporation, was suddenly dragged out of his own office. Publicly humiliated and falsely accused, it left the entire workplace in stunned silence. The receptionist, Clara, and the head of security, Frank, acted impulsively, driven by misguided assumptions. But when the truth about Marcus's identity surfaced, their world of preconceived notions unraveled. This moment became a sobering lesson in the dangers of bias. Clara, a meticulous receptionist, sat behind her sleek desk in the brightly lit lobby, shuffling through schedules for the day. Her morning was calm until a tall man in a sharp navy suit strode in confidently. His presence exuded authority, but to Clara, it felt like an unwelcome disruption. The man, Marcus, approached her with a polite smile. "Good morning," he said warmly. "I'm Marcus Reed. I have a meeting upstairs." Clara's brow furrowed, her smile disappearing. "Marcus Reed?" she repeated skeptically. "There's no one by that name on today's schedule. Are you sure you're in the right building?" Her voice held an edge of disbelief. "Yes, I'm quite sure," Marcus replied patiently. "This is my company." Clara let out a small, disbelieving laugh. "Your company? That's not possible. I think you're confused." Her tone grew cold as she reached for the phone. "If you don't leave, I'll need to call security." Unfazed, Marcus responded calmly. "I'm not confused. I am the CEO of this organization. Perhaps there's been a mistake in communication." Clara's doubt turned into open hostility. "Security," she called sharply. Within seconds, Frank, the burly head of security, appeared. "This man claims to be the CEO," Clara said mockingly, pointing at Marcus. Frank sized Marcus up with narrowed eyes. "Is that so? Got any proof?" he asked gruffly. Marcus reached into his pocket, pulled out his ID, and handed it over. Frank barely glanced at it before scoffing. "This looks fake to me. You need to leave, or we'll escort you out," he said, his tone laced with disdain. "This is unacceptable," Marcus said firmly, though his voice remained steady. "You're making a grave mistake." Clara folded her arms, smirking. "The only mistake was you thinking you could waltz in here and pretend to be someone you're not," she said smugly. As Marcus attempted to clarify further, Frank grabbed his arm roughly. "That's enough out of you," he barked. The forceful gesture caused Marcus to stumble, though he kept his balance. "This is blatant discrimination," Marcus said sharply, staring Frank in the eye. Frank sneered. "Call it whatever you want. You're not welcome here." He began dragging Marcus toward the door as a few employees in the lobby looked on, whispering among themselves. Some were amused, others visibly uncomfortable, but none intervened. Just as Frank reached the exit, a woman in a tailored blazer emerged from the nearby elevator, accompanied by two senior managers. Her expression turned alarmed as she took in the scene. "What's going on here?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the tension. Clara jumped to explain. "This man was trying to get inside without authorization. He's claiming to be Marcus Reed," she said with exaggerated emphasis, as if the very idea was laughable. The woman's gaze snapped to Marcus, and her face turned ashen. "Mr. Reed?" she asked in a stunned whisper. Marcus adjusted his jacket and replied evenly, "Yes." "It's me." The color drained from Clara's face. Frank instantly released Marcus's arm, taking a step back as realization dawned. The room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. "Mr. Reed, the woman stammered, looking horrified. "We had no idea. This is unforgivable." She turned to Clara and Frank, her eyes blazing. "How could you two possibly?" Clara's hands trembled as she struggled to find words. "Mr. Reed, I didn't mean to, I thought." "You thought what?" Marcus interrupted, his tone calm but piercing. "You assumed I couldn't be in charge here? That someone like me doesn't belong?" Clara's voice cracked. "I was just following protocol." "No," Marcus replied firmly, his voice heavy with disappointment. "You were following your prejudice." Frank lowered his gaze, muttering an inaudible apology, while Clara's face crumpled under the weight of shame. Marcus turned to address the room, now filled with silent onlookers. "Let this be a lesson," he said with quiet authority. "Judging people by their appearance has no place in this company, or anywhere." Without another word, Marcus walked past the stunned crowd, leaving behind a palpable silence. The staff stared at Clara and Frank, their expressions ranging from disapproval to discomfort. For Clara, the moment was more than a career-ending mistake. It was a mirror held up to her own biases, exposing a reality she could no longer deny. And for the rest of the office, it was a sobering reminder of the cost of prejudice. As Marcus exited the building, the air outside felt cooler, a stark contrast to the stifling tension he had just endured. He paused for a moment, breathing deeply, letting the weight of the encounter settle in his chest. While such incidents were not new to him, the sting of discrimination always left a lingering ache. He thought about the employees inside, the onlookers who had remained silent, and the system of biases that had allowed this situation to unfold. Back in the office, Clara sat frozen at her desk, her mind racing. Frank had retreated to his station, avoiding everyone's eyes. The managers, unsure of how to proceed, exchanged tense whispers. The atmosphere was thick with unease, and the usual hum of productivity was replaced by an oppressive silence. For Clara, the realization of her actions felt like a tidal wave. She replayed the encounter in her mind, the coldness in her voice, the way she had dismissed Marcus so easily. Her words echoed back at her, cruel and baseless. Clara had always considered herself professional, fair, and impartial. Yet, today, she had acted on a deep-seated bias she didn't even realize she carried. The shame was overwhelming. Minutes later, an emergency meeting was called by the management team. The entire office gathered in the large conference room, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Clara and Frank sat near the back, avoiding eye contact with anyone. The senior manager, Helen, stood at the head of the room, her expression stern. What happened today was unacceptable, she began, her voice sharp. Mr. Reed, the CEO of this company, was treated with disrespect, hostility, and blatant prejudice. This is not who we are, or who we claim to be. The employees sat in stunned silence, the weight of Helen's words sinking in. Clara shifted uncomfortably in her seat, feeling every eye in the room turning toward her. Helen continued, her voice softening but retaining its gravity. Bias, whether conscious or unconscious, is a poison. It corrodes trust, destroys opportunities, and diminishes us all. Today's incident is a stark reminder that we must confront our assumptions and hold ourselves accountable for our actions. She paused, scanning the room. Training sessions on diversity, equity, and inclusion will begin immediately. But more importantly, I expect every one of you to reflect on your behavior and the role you play in creating a welcoming workplace. Words and intentions mean nothing without action. The meeting concluded with heavy hearts and somber expressions. As the employees dispersed, Clara lingered behind, knowing she couldn't leave without addressing Helen. Her palms were clammy, her throat dry, but she forced herself to approach. Helen, she began hesitantly, her voice barely above a whisper. I need to apologize. To you, to Mr. Reed, to everyone. I was wrong. I let my own biases cloud my judgment. I don't know how to make up for it, but I want to try. Helen regarded her with a steady gaze. Acknowledging the problem is a start, Clara, she said. But apologies alone aren't enough. I hope you're ready to put in the work, to challenge your biases and rebuild trust. This will be a long road, but it's one you must walk if you're serious. Clara nodded, tears stinging her eyes. I'll do whatever it takes. Meanwhile, Marcus sat in his private office on the top floor, gazing out at the city skyline. Despite the pain of the day's events, he felt a sense of resolve. He knew his journey as a black business leader would always come with challenges, but it also came with an opportunity to inspire change. The next morning, Marcus addressed the entire company in a town hall meeting. He spoke candidly about his experiences, both as a leader and as a man who had faced prejudice countless times. He shared his vision for a company built on mutual respect, empathy, and accountability. I don't want what happened yesterday to define us, Marcus said, his voice steady. Instead, let it be a turning point, a reminder of what we can achieve when we confront our biases and choose to do better. His words sparked something in the room, a mixture of guilt, hope, and determination. From that day forward, the company took tangible steps toward fostering a culture of inclusivity. Policies were reviewed, hiring practices scrutinized, and ongoing education implemented. Clara and Frank, humbled by their mistakes, became active participants in the transformation, determined to prove they could grow. Though the road ahead was long, the incident became a catalyst for change, not just within the company, but for everyone involved. It was a lesson in humility, resilience, and the power of choosing to do better, no matter how difficult it might be.